So here it is, the Darkstar16 by GEPRC. When I first saw this thing released, I knew I just had to get it because it reminded me so much of my first drone, the TinyGo 4K, the actual drone that started this whole YouTube channel. Now this one here has been modified multiple times and well documented on this channel with the XT30 connector, a data logger, and actually Express LRS receiver. All things that were not available in traditional drones and definitely not available in this original TinyGo. So when I saw this Darkstar16, man, it just gave me goosebumps and memories of my first drone, so I just had to get it. So let's see what you get with the Darkstar16. And here it is, the drone immediately here. Now you have two canopies on here, a gray one and this nice bright orange color right here. And here it is. Look at this thing, guys. The presentation is pretty cool. Now this is kind of a recent change from GEPRC. Typically they would have their drones wrapped up in some kind of like shrink wrapped, but as you can see, this thing looks beautiful. Really good presentation right here. And there it is. Wow, we'll take a look at that and compare it to the TinyGo 4K. And you have some other parts right here, and we'll figure this out a little bit later once we install the 04 Pro in this drone. Looks like a landing pad, to be honest with you. Next, we actually have some extra ducts on here, which is nice. A lot of accessories. A USB-A to micro USB. And we have a whole bag here with a lot of tools and props in here. Some spare props, some spare antennas. Not only just two for the 04 Pro, but an extra set, so 4 antennas total. Looks like a cable here to go from the actual flight controller to the 04 Air unit. So that's a spare. A tweezer, a prop removal tool. Looks like 2 prop removal tools. That's a lot of stuff in here. A screwdriver, and it looks like a keychain on here. So this bag has a lot of stuff in here. Besides that, you have your manuals for your flight controller. We'll talk about that a little bit later, as well as a support card for the drones. Last but not least, there's some stickers down here. And you can put this on your toolbox, on your drones, batteries, whatever. Pretty cool overall. Let's see here. Darkstar, there's no TinyGo 4K on this one. Now let's take a look at this Darkstar16. And as I said before, guys, this reminded me so much of my TinyGo 4K. In fact, guys, I really do think that GEPRC probably could have labeled this the TinyGo 4K V2, but because they do now have the Darkstar line, it does make sense to name this the 16 and then the 20 and so forth. Now, there's a lot of similarities to the other one. Let's just weigh this. Now, it's not going to weigh the same because I don't have the VTX in here. Now, this can be sold both with the VTX already attached or built into here, or in my case, I think they call it WTF, pretty much without the VTX. It's a little bit more affordable, and if you do have the 04 Pro already, you can just transfer it over to this drone right here. Here it is. And that's showing 52.7 grams. Not too bad, pretty good for a 2S drone of this size. And this one here has been highly modified, but it also has the VTX installed as well as a DVR recorder. And 58 grams. So that's not bad actually, guys. Now, having said that, these two are both 2S drones. They have come a long way. Now, it's gonna be hard to see this. Hopefully you can see it on here. But a lot of the things here do remain the same, including the diameters of the propellers, 1.6 inches, obviously. In fact, this is the exact same propeller on the TinyGo 4K. Now, the big difference here is obviously the wheelbase. As you can see, it's a little bit wider on the Darkstar16. Therefore, you'll have a little bit more power control with the wider wheelbase here. Having said that, the motor's a little bit different. This one here is just a smidget bigger, and therefore more power and torque on here. Besides that, we do have these ducts in here. We saw it earlier on here. These are like injected molded ducts. They are a little bit thinner than the ones here. These are a little bit more sturdy. Now, besides that, the actual flight control is very similar on the two. It is a STM32 F411 flight controller with a 12 amp ESC. So very similar on here. Now, I never had any issues with the one on the TinyGo 4K, and it makes sense that it carries over here as well. Now, the big difference here is that this one has built-in Express LRS, which this one here did not have. So, and I did have to include my Express LRS receiver on here by soldering to the actual flight controller. Now, what's really impressive on the Darkstar16 is this frame on here. It's carbon fiber, but it's a thick carbon fiber on here, and that's gonna do a lot of wonders for vibration. Now the Tiny Go was all plastic, no actual carbon fiber on this one. So we'll see how it goes. Dude, this is freaking me out, guys. It's like looking at a well, I'm gonna show my age here, but a 1980s car versus like a 2000-year-old car. The evolution is amazing. It's great. I'm surprised we do still have a micro USB connector for the flight controller, but it is very accessible. And here's your XT30 connector right here. Really nice and flush integrated into the frame and the flight controller here. Here's the antenna for the Express LRS. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And the star of the show here is this canopy here. Now they've gone away from the Caddx Loris, which is a camera that I actually really love, hence the reason why I actually modified this drone so much. Guys, I've done a series of videos on this drone, maybe like close to 10 videos on just the Tiny Go 4K. Just to take advantage of this nice 4K camera on here. Now this is an analog drone, guys, old school analog, so the cost was lower there, but this does have a high resolution 4K camera. So to take advantage of that, I did put the stabilization on this, but everything is taken care of right here. You have these nice grommets on the front here, and that's gonna remove the vibration going to the 04 Air Unit Pro. Maintenance on these drones can be a nightmare sometimes. You have to dismantle the whole thing. GEPRC has made some changes on here, and they're very proud of it. It's just 6 screws to get access to the 04 Air unit. So this should be a fairly easy install. All right, I'm gonna put the 04 Air Unit Pro in this and then take it for a flight and let you know my impressions. It's been a while since I've been kind of hyped about a small drone like this. They are very similar. All right, let's go for a flight. Okay, so we're back from our flight test, and the Darkstar16 did a pretty good job. Now, the weather for the past couple of days have been kind of windy on and off. We're talking about winds between 5 and 15 miles an hour. Not the perfect conditions for a drone of this size. Now, the first thing I noticed when I armed this drone was how quiet it was. Now, I've been finding a lot of drones here in the past couple of weeks, and they've been pretty loud, and they're around the same size as this Darkstar16 here. So I was surprised that it was so quiet. And I'm also comparing it to the actual Tiny Go 4K, which has very similar propellers on here. So this one here has a high-pitched squeal, and this one here is relatively quiet, so that's really impressive. Now, after taking off, honestly, guys, I thought stabilization was on immediately, which doesn't happen because your goggles doesn't have stabilization built into it. That's how good the tune was. It was so smooth. Now, one thing I do have to say is that GEPRC does have 2 profiles on this drone, one for outdoors and one for indoors. Since I did most of my flying outdoors, I did fly on the profile for outdoors, and it did a pretty good job. As I said before, it was super smooth, guys. Now, GEPRC has a really good history of tuning their drones very, very well, and this is no exception. I guess they have really good test pilots, but they do put a lot of work and man hours into making these drones fly really well, guys. Very, very smooth overall. One thing though, the rates are just a little bit low. I think they're perfect for me, but some of the other drones in the market tend to be a little bit twitchy, maybe a bit higher rates. But when you combine the good tune on this with the rates on here, it really kind of favors a cinematic feel. So if you're trying to capture smooth cinematic images, this drone head has really good composure, guys. I did do some cinematic flying as well as some acro maneuvers, and this thing does a really good job in that department as well. If you want some more authority, I would obviously increase the rates, but from the factory, I think it's pretty adequate. Now, acro maneuvers, this obviously is a tiny whoop with these ducks on here, so it's not gonna perform as well as a freestyle drone, but it did a pretty good job. The rolls and loops were pretty good. It did some dives, and it did not freak out, guys. My only complaint with the acro maneuvers is that these motors are a little bit small for that, for recovery or for authority. If you want to do a quick punch out, they're just a little bit underpowered, but for cinematic purposes, it's pretty good. I think this is probably the smallest you want to go for a drone with the 04 Pro on here, because you do have a lot of weight. Talking about that, let's just wait here now that we have everything on the drone. And I did fly with the recommended 550 milliamp hour 2S batteries. So 84.5 grams, so not bad. And with the 550 milliamp 2S battery, let's see how much it weighs. 113.9, so not too bad. I think maybe 2 to 2.5 is the sweet spot for 04 Air Unit Pros, but this works out really well. So there's really no surprise there. As I said before, GEPRC does a really good job with their tuning, and it does fit the bill. So if you're looking for a good flying drone to do mostly cinematic, maybe some indoor shooting, and then some light acro on the side, then this is the drone for you. All right, let's move on to image quality, which is probably the most important part of any drone. How well does it capture images? How well does it transmit the image to your goggles, the whole flight experience? And this is the 04A Unit Pro. We know that this thing performs very well. So the image coming to my goggles is very, very good. Now, one thing I have to mention is that these small antennas here, these are pretty standard antennas from any drone. And these things have less performance than the standard, here I have it right here, the DJI standard antennas here. These are a little bit taller with a bigger mass, and these perform great. I do notice sometimes when I go into challenging RF environments, I still do get an image, but the bitrate does go down a lot significantly compared to these standard antennas on here. But you know, you're trying to reduce weight as well as reduce drag. This is probably the optimal antenna for a drone of this size, and hence the reason why I actually kept these on here. And I did put this in gyro flow, and the image was silky smooth, so no vibration going in here. Now, one thing I have to mention, and we'll talk about this later in the durability of this drone, is this little hat or top part here. This is kind of cumbersome. I don't know how much protection this is actually providing to the actual camera on here, but I do feel it's one more thing to consider when you're flying and you have to adjust the tilt on the front camera on here, because sometimes this is attached to this, so you can remove this or tilt this canopy independent of this camera here, but sometimes when you do want to move the camera, it does interfere with this canopy. So it is a nice cosmetic touch, but I don't know if it's serving much purpose, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the durability of the drone overall. Now let's talk about the battery life of the Darkstar16, and I was having so much fun with this drone. Battery was my least concern. It was such a smooth and seamless experience. It did bring me back to some of the GEPRC other drones, which are, you know, you don't really think about battery. It's just a smooth experience. It's almost like an extension of your hands when you're flying the drone. It's kind of telepathic. It does what you wanted to do. That battery is your last concern. Now, in my experience here, I did fly with two batteries, both the 550 and the smaller 450 2S batteries. They both fit pretty well under here. Now that I think about it, I do have some larger 2S batteries that I didn't test, like a 650 and maybe a 700. But with the 550, I did get around 3 minutes of flight time, no matter if I cruised or fly aggressively. I think GEPRC says you can get around 4 minutes, but in my testing, I did get 3. And with the smaller 450, I got around 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes. So your performance may vary depending on the style of flying and the weather conditions. I did have some windy conditions on here. It's just a shame because I want more flight time with this. And doing testing, trying to do some cinematic shooting, you do have to scout your area, and you have to be very precise. You can't just waste time. You gotta get up and get your shot and come down with this 3 minutes of flight time. Let's talk about the RX performance of the Darkstar16. Now, I typically don't talk about the receiver performance only because most of these drones in the market have Express LS receivers. And if you've flown one drone ELRS, you've flown others, they all perform the same performance. It's really good. You can get pretty far with even 100 milliwatts. Now, I did fly my Radar Master Pocket here at around, I think, 250 milliwatts, the highest it goes. Now, the reason I bring this up is because on my first flight, I did take off, and I saw that the RSSI dBm was kind of low, and I saw the link quality kind of fluctuating. I was like, that's not normal. This is kind of weird, especially for an external antenna. And I still took off, flew it around, and I see the RSSI going down really fast, see the link quality just fluctuating, and then sure enough, I get the warning from my radio, telemetry loss, and then I'm flying, and then I see RX loss in my goggles. Now, luckily, I didn't have a fail-safe. It didn't drop out the sky, but I continued to fly it. I know something was wrong. I was like, oh man, this is gonna ruin my testing. Came back, took a look at it. Long story short, the UFL connector popped off from the actual receiver board here, or the actual flight controller board. And I was kind of disappointed with that, only because this thing was, assembled from the factory. And the weird part is that there's no glue on this thing. So I would highly recommend you put glue on your UFL antenna, or every single flight, check to see if it's connected. I'm just lucky that I didn't really burn up the receiver. Granted, it is a receiver. This happened to me multiple times while I was testing this drone. It probably popped off 3 times. And that's why I said there was multiple times where I had to take this canopy off and then taking it off via these grommets on here is the preferred way, no tools required. And it comes off in like 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Two things, this UFL connection is very low on the board, and there's other components, transistors, resistors, all around this, and it's really hard to get a flush mount on the actual connection on here. And the second thing is that I just think that this antenna cable is just a little bit too short. I think they did measure this, but it's just a little bit too short for the routing. And if you put this antenna, as you can see, mine is not in the original place. It's kind of lower here, hanging. And that's because whenever I put it back into the canopy, it just pulls it out from the UFL connector. Now, I did reconnect it, and it performed typically like a normal Express LRS receiver. Really good range, good RSSI dBm, good link quality. And after that, never had an issue with it. So the receiver performs very well. Just make sure the antenna is connected. Let's move on to durability and cosmetics of this drone. Now, I typically don't talk about durability unless I crash it or something breaks. There was no issue with this drone. Everything is pretty good. I did crash this drone maybe once or twice, and everything looks pretty good, no cracks. This frame is amazing, very, very thick. We talked about this canopy earlier and the camera protection on here. I don't know if this is doing anything for protection. I do think the camera is kind of exposed here. Luckily, I didn't have any front impacts, but maybe they can do something better with this design down the future. It does look good, hence the reason why I do want to talk about durability and cosmetics or appearance. This is a very attractive drone, guys. It is beautifully made. Everything looks really good, high quality. The color chosen was really great. You have two colors, the gray and this orange color in here. GEPRC does have really high quality hardware, and this is no exception right here. Really, really good. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about pricing of this drone. That's something I don't talk about much either, because this is all subjective. If you can afford this, you'll buy it. But the nature of these drones, it's getting really expensive. Now, if I can see right here, the pricing for this one right here is $139. That's without the VTX. This is just with the ELRS receiver. And then you have to source your VTX on your own. Now, I don't think I have the option here to, let's see here. So without the receiver, it's $129, so $10 less. And let's see how much it costs with the 04 Air unit. All right, it's between $389 and $399, so $400 for this. Yes, prices have gone up over the years, whether it be, you know, we had chip shortage like 5 years ago and inflation, and now we have the issues going on here with, you know, trying to get DJI 04 Air units in the US and trying to get these things through customs with, you know, no tariffs and stuff like that. It's getting up there in price, guys. Now, if you can find an 04 unit for cheap, that's fine. $400 for something like this. I remember my first 5-inch quad was around $160 or so, and it was a pretty decent quad. So something this small for $400. Now, I had to pay for this myself, obviously, doing this review. As I said, $139, $140. Now, I did have to pay for expedited shipping. Obviously, I'm trying to review these drones here, and it still took almost a month and a half to get. I don't know, because of shipping issues, custom issues, who knows what happened. I actually forgot I actually ordered this thing, and that was like $40, $45 on top of the $140. Now, on top of that, once I got it, I did have to pay tariff and fees. Now, I'm not blaming anyone for that. It just is a consequence of the times we live in. And I also have to pay around $45 in fees and tariff and taxes. So we're looking at around $220 or so or more just for this without the VTX. It's a pretty pricey drone. Obviously, businesses have to make money. GEPRC have to make money, and it is a quality drone, but it is one of the pricier drones in its segment here. So you might want to consider that. So overall, what do I think about the Darkstar16? I do think this is a special drone. Something about me wants to tweak this drone even more, only because it flies so good. It's so smooth. It's like buying a German car, guys, where like you're driving it, you're on the highway, and it feels like you're doing like 45 miles an hour. You look at the speedometer and you're doing like 85. You're like, holy crap, it's so smooth, effortlessly. This drone here flies like that. There's really no issues, no twitching. It does what you want it to do. The only thing I wish it did have was more power and a longer battery life, but this is a pretty good drone. If you can get one, if you can source one, if you have local stores that carry these, this might be a good drone to look at if you're trying to do some indoor flying, or even have a park fly, because it is kind of quiet and it has really good performance overall. It really is an extension of the TinyGo 4K. And as I said before earlier, I do think that this probably could have been called the TinyGo 4K Mark II, but they've kind of gone over to the Darkstar name, and I do think this is probably going to be the equivalent drone for that. So I do suspect maybe in the near future they might have an RTF kit with a drone maybe of this size. Maybe they'll do one with the 04 Pro and the 04 Lite and put that into an RTF kit maybe to reduce the price overall. But this thing here is a really good drone, and I do like it. This might be a keeper for some time to come, just like my TinyGo 4K, which was my first drone here. Now, if you want to see a review on the TinyGo 4K, which I've mentioned multiple times in this video, I've done a series of these videos, maybe 10 to 11 of them. One of my favorite drones in the fleet, hence the reason why I still have it. I've done tons of modifications to make this up to this kind of standard here with updated pigtails, data logging, and even an express LRS receiver on here. So if you want to see the video, I'll leave a link right here so you can take a look at it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.